seems like one of the greatest people ever, if this quote is completely true. Now, what he said when he was laying on the ground, one of his last words he ever fucking said, he said, "Is everybody all right?" Digest that a little bit. Take that in a little bit. Is everybody all right? He's the only one that died. He's the only one that died. After 911 was called, paramedics showed up very quickly and examined Mr. Kennedy and noticed there was a wound behind his ear that would turn out to be the fatal headshot. He was rushed to Good Samaritan Hospital, where he died later that night, early in the morning, June 6th. He died, officially. But that's not even close to the end of our story. We've got plenty of things to go over here. He was a great man. Let's say that, though. I don't think I said that too much in the JFK episode, and I apologize. Sometimes we get lost in the juiciness of these murders and stuff, and we forget about the people that are involved. This guy was... I knew JFK had some good ideas and everything like that. Just overall, for being a good person, RFK just sounds like he was a great guy. It really sucks that we lost him. Now, why would somebody want to do this? He does have a motive for wanting to kill Mr. Robert F. Kennedy. I know a lot of people say that he really didn't, but there is somewhat of a motive. It's not entirely clear. He did write in his journal about 3 weeks before, May 18th, 1968, "My determination to eliminate RFK is becoming more and more of an unshakable obsession. Robert F. Kennedy must be assassinated before June 5th, 1968. He apparently wrote that in his journal, and that happened to be the day that he died. As for an actual motive for murder, it might have been because of Mr. Kennedy backing a plan promising 50 fighter jets to the Israeli army in an ongoing war against Sirhan Sirhan's homeland. You gotta remember, Sirhan Sirhan was from Old Jerusalem. I mean, he did have beef against the Israelis because the Arabs and the Jews have been going at it for millennia. It's crazy. And they're all fighting over that same, I don't want to call it stupid, but the same little piece of land, killing each other like crazy. I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but it is ridiculous. Well, he was immediately arrested after the shooting and charged almost immediately. It only took him about a day to charge him. June 8th, 1968 was Robert Kennedy's funeral, and Edward Kennedy had given a very famous eulogy, which in my opinion there shouldn't be such a thing as a famous eulogy, but he did say some great things about him. This one was very moving. "My brother need not be idolized or enlarged in death beyond what he is in life. To be remembered simply as a good and decent man who saw wrong and tried to right it, saw suffering and tried to heal it, saw war and tried to stop it." That really resonated with me. I mean, reading it right now, it actually makes me a tiny bit emotional because that's deep, man. That is deep. I really wish the world was like that, but we all know it's not. February 12th, 1969, the trial of Sirhan Sirhan was underway. That took a while. Holy shit, did that take a while. I guess they wanted to get all the evidence, but goddamn did that take a long time. Alright, Sirhan Sirhan's trial for assassinating Robert F. Kennedy began on February 12th, 1969. Prosecutors were looking to portray Sirhan Sirhan as a cold, calculated murderer. The defense, meanwhile, was pinning its hopes on diminished capacity, basically saying that he wasn't mentally stable, so claiming insanity, basically. In their opening statements, prosecutors said that just 2 days before the attack, Sirhan Sirhan was seen at the Ambassador Hotel attempting to learn the building's layout, assuming that he was going to try to escape. But how are you going to escape, man? There ain't no way after shooting what could have been the president. On June 4th, he visited a gun range to hone his already considerable shooting skills with a pistol. He is from Jerusalem in the Middle East, and a lot of those people over there have to learn how to shoot guns just to defend themselves. So that's, The defense, meanwhile, hoped to prove that Sirhan's actions were a spontaneous act of a deranged mind. Again, temporary insanity or something along those lines. To back up that claim, Bernard L. Diamond, a psychiatrist and legal scholar who introduced the concept of diminished capacity to courtrooms, argued that the trauma a young Sirhan had suffered during the bombing of his homeland during the 1948 Arab-Israeli War impaired his mental faculties. After all was said and done in the trial, though, on April 17th, 1969, Sirhan was found guilty of first-degree murder. The judge said, quote, he was alone and not in any concert with anyone else. So he's saying that there is no conspiracy whatsoever. Just 5 days later, April 23rd, 1969, Sirhan was sentenced to death. 3 years later, in 1972, his sentence was commuted to life in prison. The state of California Supreme Court had ruled that capital punishment was a violation of the California Constitution's prohibition of cruel and unusual punishment. This happened to a lot of people back then. The case, People versus Anderson, was deemed retroactive, invalidating all previous death sentences handed down in California. In 1971, Sirhan was sent to the Adjustment Center of San Quentin State Prison. He was then transferred to the Correctional Training Facility in Soledad, California. I don't know if he Soledad. I don't know what until 1992. I apologize if anybody's from there. I don't know how to say that. Ever since then, he's put in appeal after appeal after appeal. And he really believes that he is innocent because he does not remember anything. He does not recall anything. To this day, he still says he's innocent. Which for a man that's going to die pretty soon anyway in prison, and he couldn't get any worse punishment, why would he lie about that? If he was doing it for his country, why would he lie about that? We'll go into all that, though. Let's get into some of the theories about this. The woman in the polka dotted dress, MK Ultra, Sirhan not knowing anything that happened, not really remembering anything, being genuine about that. Now, one of the most interesting theories / just interesting tidbit is that even Robert F. Kennedy's children do not believe the official events. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has actually visited Sirhan in prison, the man convicted of killing his father. So he basically went in and just visited him and talked to him about everything, letting him know that he doesn't believe the official story. He doesn't believe that Sirhan killed his father. If there's one person in the world that's going to want the person in jail that killed Robert F. Kennedy, it's his son. So, in all honesty, he is a big proponent in this being a conspiracy theory. The majority of Sirhan's appeals were based on him being a victim of mind control. He truly believes that he was a victim of MK Ultra, which, like I said, we'll have an entire episode on that. It ties into a lot of other conspiracy theories, that's for sure. Even his attorney had said, though the practice of hypnoprogramming / mind control is hardly new, the public has been shielded from the darker side of the practice. The average person is unaware that hypnosis can and is used to indicate antisocial conduct in humans. So basically he's saying that it can be used to do bad instead of just goofy things like a hypnotist does on stage with people. You have to be a very impressionable person to get hypnotized. But this guy was a victim of actual, like, monarch programming or something along those lines that MK Ultra did, or dosing him with acid and shit like that. He wouldn't have to be that impressionable, because putting them under that stress, it'll do it to anybody. You can make anybody a slave. When you sit down and you try to take a serious look at the entire investigation, it is really fishy. Now, in the defense of the official story, this is probably the only time in this that I'm going to defend the official story. In defense of the official story, there are several things that indicate that Sirhan Sirhan is lying. He was obsessed with mythical powers and apparently believing he was learning to control events with his mind and fascinated with hypnosis already. So that was something he was already into. This may have led to him believing that he was a Manchurian candidate and had been programmed to shoot RFK. And that's how he failed to recall any of the events. In support of the theory that he might have been a Manchurian candidate, or he might not have been the only one involved, there are several articles out there that explain the evidence in a certain way that makes you really believe that maybe there was a second shooter there that day. There's a lot of ballistic evidence. I'm going to go over some of this stuff. Little about the official explanation of the events at the Ambassador Hotel on June 5th, 1968 makes sense. Now, a new forensic analysis of the only audio recording of the fatal shootings has been given new weight to a controversial theory that there were, in fact, two shooters. And the man that is convicted of killing Kennedy, Sirhan Sirhan, did not fire the fatal shots. Now, he might have fired some. He might not have fired any. He might have been under mind control just to convince him that he actually did, which is a very big possibility. This is right in the prime of MK Ultra, when MK Ultra was still running, supposedly. I think it's still running today, but they officially closed up shop, I think, in the 70s. Following his victory speech to supporters after clinching a tight Democratic victory in California, Kennedy left the podium to the Ambassador Ballroom to address a press conference. But the shortcut he and his entourage took through the hotel's pantry quickly descended into bloody mayhem. As Kennedy turned from shaking hands with two of the kitchen staff, a gunman stepped forward and began firing. Kennedy was hit by 4 shots, including one which lodged in the vertebrae in his neck, and another one which entered his brain from below his right ear. So that bullet actually seemed like it came from the back. Sirhan Sirhan was supposedly in front of him, so he died in the hospital the following day. Of course, Sirhan Sirhan was basically the patsy in this. And they said that he was apprehended with a literal smoking gun. But the lone gunman explanation has always looked shaky. The autopsy of Kennedy's body suggests that all 4 shots that hit him came from behind, and powder marks on his skin show they must have been fired from close range. This is in several different places. I keep on reading this. Every ballistics expert out there looks at the powder burns on Kennedy's clothing and skin and says that this is supposed to be point blank range 1 to 2 inches away. Sirhan Sirhan didn't get closer than 3 feet away. So it's a very big possibility. Maybe people are mistaken and Sirhan Sirhan was actually closer than he actually was. There's so many people out there that do not believe it. It's just like the JFK shooting. Now, this could be a product of the 60s. This could be a product of people just not trusting the government, which I wouldn't blame them. All right, so a forensic scientist who was involved with the Kennedy case, the RFK case, not the JFK case, the RFK case for the last 40 years had said, this is a quote, "There is no doubt in our minds that no fewer than 14 shots were fired in the pantry on that evening. And Sirhan Sirhan did not, in fact, kill Senator Kennedy." This was said by a forensic scientist, Robert Joling. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. I'm terrible at pronouncing names, so Give me a break. He and Van Praagh published a book on the killing entitled An Open and Shut Case. The inconsistencies in the case have